Oh, when the blues go steaming in, I want to be in that number. Oh, when the blues go steaming in.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to SW6 Blues Pride of London. And with Matty Nash from UK Casuals. And today we've got a guest on who I know rather well. We've written a few books together. We were once described as the Lennon McCartney of the football hooligan world, but I don't know whether he made that up.
Who described
Martin
it?
Knight. Good afternoon, Martin. Welcome, mate. Lovely to
Hi,
see
Martin.
you.
Nice to see you. How are you feeling?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, all right,
Good.
mate. Not too bad. I had a few dramas this week with my chemo, but I'm all right now. Martin, let's start with why you're a Chelsea fan. How did you start supporting Chelsea?
Well, I actually started supporting Crystal Palace, first of all.
Really?
Yeah, my father got a job in a hospital over in Croydon, and he sort of got caught up in the whole Crystal Palace thing. It was the season that they got promoted from the old second division to the first, I think 1968-9, something like that. And Stevie Campbell was the hero. And I went to my first match over there at Palace. And then probably the first season they were in the first division, maybe a bit later, Chelsea came and played at Selhurst Park. And I've never seen anything like it. It was just a post-skinhead sort of era. And I sort of got swept up in all of that. And I thought, well, blimey, Palace was good some of the time, but I thought if this is what Chelsea are like away, what's it like at home? And I went to the Shed. I think it was against Sheffield United, but my memory is going now, so it's a bit unreliable. But I went to the Shed, and that was it more or less. After that, I dropped Palace and occasional Fulham. I used to go there now and then as well, and went to Chelsea and supported Chelsea, ever since.
So you was the original glory hunter then?
I suppose you could say that, yeah. Johnny come lately.
That's it, yeah. And how old was you when you went to Palace with your dad and that then?
Well, I was about 9 or 10, I think, when I first went. 68 or maybe 11 at the most. And he took us the first time. It was against Tottenham, the first game. And I think Jimmy Greaves played, and he was a hero of mine. Jimmy Greaves, absolutely loved him. And then I think after a couple of times with my dad, he then said, "Oh, okay, you can go on your own." And I started going with my mates, and that was that, really.
Because where you come from in Epsom, there's a big Chelsea area, isn't there? We've got a few. You've got a few mates.
You know what? I was thinking about it the other day. It depends on the age group, because there's a core of Tottenham fans also in Epsom, and I always wondered, why the hell do they support Tottenham? But they were that bit older than me, so they were sort of caught up in the adulation of the double team of '61 and shortly after. And then I think 1970 was a big, when Chelsea beat Leeds, was a big draw for young people to support Chelsea. And I really noticed after that at school, when I got to senior school, everyone had those Chelsea bags.
So it's different generations, Martin.
That's what I think. Yeah. I mean, basically, where we lived in Surrey, we're in Epsom. You were up for grabs. Fulham had you at one point, Tottenham had you for a little while, and then Chelsea had you, and more or less kept you.
So to set that cup winning side in 1970 featured someone me and you worked with and got to know, Peter Rossdale.
Yes.
So what was it like for you? I know what it was like for me to work with someone who played for Chelsea. What was it like for you?
Well, I couldn't believe it, really. Couldn't believe it. I when I was a kid, I had pictures ripped out of Football Monthly and Goal on my wall, and I had Peter Osgood up there, Charlie Cook, Alan Hudson, George Best, Dave Mackay, and I ended up working with all these guys. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
It was beyond a dream, really. And Ozzy, as you say, he was everything we expected him to be, wasn't he? Really, I mean, he was a real wit.
Right, that's interesting, Martin, because they say that you should never meet your idols, but obviously meeting Ozzy or Osgood, that's not right, because you said he was everything you thought he was going to be.
Well, I wonder who actually made that quote originally about never meeting your idols, because I've met a few of them now, and none of them have disappointed me. None of them.
And what was it like to work with George Best, Mark? You've told me.
I mean, I was very lucky with George because, or unlucky, whatever way you want to look at it. He had just had his liver transplant when I was working with him, so he was very weak. He was at home, so I got plenty of time with him, and he was in a very reflective period in his career. In his life. And he opened up to me. And I mean, when the publishers gave me the job, and I got the job because I lived near him more than anything else, they said to me, "You've got to try and get something new," because he'd already written about 9 autobiographies by then. And it was hard to get something new, but I hope that I did. But the real sad thing was at the end of it all, the book was called Scoring at Half Time, and we were due to do a tour. So we were going to do book signings in Belfast, Manchester, Liverpool, London, Newcastle, perhaps. I can't remember exactly. And the first one was in London, in Canary Wharf. Yeah. And we went in the car, in a cab from Epsom, with Phil Hughes, in manager. And we got to Canary Wharf, and I think it was Books, etc., when they were doing it, which isn't even going now. And there was this snake of people, a queue. We were there for a lunchtime signing. We got there about 10:30, quarter to 11, or 11 o'clock, and there was this queue, and it was going all down the block. And he said, "What's all that about?" I said, "That's for you." And he really, he was so humble and modest. Yeah, he couldn't believe it. Yeah. Anyway, he was signing, and he was loving it. He was doing selfies with people, and he was really, really on a high. And I've never seen him so animated. He absolutely loved it. And then he said to me and Phil, "Well, I've seen a coat on the King's Road I want to buy, so I'm going to hop on a bus and go down and buy it." And Phil said, "Well, don't be silly. We could go back that way in the cab." When I looked around, and he'd gone, and I never saw him again. That weekend, I went up to Norfolk to stay where I stay up there, and someone rang me up and said, "Have you got Sky News?" I said, "No." Anyway, he'd gone to a pub near us, the Checkers, plotted up in there. The Sky cameras were outside, and it was the beginning of him going back on the drink after that day. So it was sort of very sad, really, how it all ended up.
Yeah. And did you know he weren't well then, Martin?
It shows how humble he was, Martin, because George Best hopping on a bus is not something you would.
But he would do that. He would do that. Yeah, he would do that. Sorry, Martin, what did you say?
I said, did you realise how ill he was when you were working with him?
No, what happened was he'd had the liver transplant, and he was getting stronger every day. So when I first went round there, it was like a little bird sitting in a chair. It was very sad to see, how frail he was. But with each day that went, or each week that went by, he was getting stronger and stronger. And I went round there one day, and Alex answered the door, and we had a meeting scheduled. And she said, "I'm really sorry, but he's gone out." And I said, "Well, where's he gone?" Because obviously he wasn't drinking. So she said, "Well, I'll guess I've taken a guess. He's in the bookies in Cheam Village." So I've gone down there, and he's in there. And in those days, people still smoked in the bookies. So it was like full of men, full of banter, full of cigarette smoke. And I sort of tumbled. The reason he's in there, it was the closest he could go to going to the pub without indulging in alcohol.
Oh dear.
Yeah,
that's sad. Yeah, he was a legend, wasn't he, George Best? Genius, wasn't he?
Oh, he was
a great player. I thought he was a great player. And then you also worked with Alan Hudson. How did that come about, Mark? No, the original one with Working Man's Ballet.
Well, I didn't work on that really. I might have done.
But there was a geezer who worked with you who was writing it. When he did a bloke work.
Yeah, Ian McClay wrote. Ian McClay wrote the Working Man's Ballet with him. No, I knew Alan. We had some family connections. We've got family connections now. Actually, sorry, at the time, my best man Mitch was Alan's cousin. So I sort of met Alan a couple of times in the 70s at parties and things, but obviously he was a big star and I didn't really speak to him. And then Ian, who helped Alan with the Working Man's Ballet, he was working for me. He was an accountant, and he came up to me one day and said, "You're a Chelsea fan, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Would you like to meet Alan Hudson?" I said, "Yeah, I don't mind." He said, "Well, I'm meeting him in a minute in the pub across the road in Stamford Street in London." And I've gone in there, and he introduced me, and we chatted, and we sort of covered I knew his cousin, Big Anthony Mason, very well. He's a good friend of mine.
Yeah. I know Anthony. Yeah, met Anthony.
He sadly passed away now.
Yeah.
So Alan said, "What would you like to drink?" And I could see that he was drinking red wine. So I said, "I'll have a red wine, please." So he's got to the bar and he's come back and he's got himself a bottle and me a bottle. He's plonked the bottle down in front of me. And I said, I only wanted a glass. He said, "We can't muck about." And that was it. Yeah. So,
you're still friends. You're still good friends with him now, Mark, aren't you?
Yeah. We see each other regularly. We've had some real smashing times. I mean, not that long ago, he took me up to Stoke to Gordon Banks' funeral.
You went to that?
Yeah.
You went to Banks' funeral? Fucking hell.
Yeah.
How lucky is that?
He introduced me to. I saw Jackie Charlton there. Actually, he was there. Sadly, he was obviously not very well. Roger Hunt. So I met a couple of the World Cup winning side. It was thrilling, really, And we've had lots of adventures together, me and Alan.
And so have me and you, because we've met some interesting people. But I mean,
we did.
Everybody knows we've done Hooli Fan together. And I thought we worked really well together and done some other books, Jimmy Stopkins and other things and that. And like when we first met, we were like two polar opposites, really, weren't we? You was a successful businessman. I was a black cab driver. And we sort of come together and just really clicked, didn't we, with writing? I mean,
do you remember where it was?
Up in Tadworth at the Working Man's Club.
Tony Jones' 40th, wasn't it?
That's it, yeah.
I remember someone's coming.
And then we've done Hooli Fan. I think it's the most successful hooligan book ever now. People are saying, I don't know how true it is. So
anyway. I don't even think of it as a hooligan book. I think Hooli Fan was more about the culture and the camaraderie, and it captured the stuff that others hadn't. Because it was a movement, really, in a way. I saw it as a sort of continuation from Mods and Rockers.
Yeah, I said that.
It was a sort of a youth movement, and I didn't think really anyone was capturing that. And when I read your manuscript, I realised, you've got it. And that's how I remembered it, as a sort of a very exciting time in my youth.
As you said, it was easy to join. Well, there was nothing to join, but it was easy to join in with and easy to leave. There was no membership. There was no what the press built it up to be. This sort of as our friend Brimpson described it, as like people were paying into a bank account to keep the firm going. And we've had this conversation with him before personally, haven't we?
It may have changed. After the time I used to go. When I used to go, it wasn't everyone in the shed was raucous and. Sang those songs, and it wasn't like this small minority. It was probably the majority were what some people would call hooligans. But the whole meaning of the word has become lost in it. So I was one of the crowd. I wasn't ever, as you know, one of the fighters or anything like that, really. But I just remember being so enthused by it all, and the rush that you got. And, who's gonna turn up in the North Stand, and will the North Stand do their job and all that stuff?
Yeah. But it wasn't only about the football; it was about the camaraderie. It was about at the time, fashion was a big thing, music was a big thing, and going with your mates on. It was a big. It wasn't just about the violence. Well, most weeks there wasn't any violence, so
that wasn't the be all and end all, was it?
Running down the road.
No.
Yeah.
It was definitely different. So, and then you've sort of been you started your own publishing company up in the last few years, Mark.
Yeah, well, that's been going over 10 years now. That's London
10
Books.
Years.
More than probably 12. Could be even be 12. So John King and I, John King, who wrote The Football Factory and many other books after that, we got introduced again, funny enough, by Ian McClay. He introduced us. So I'm not sure how he knew John, but he'd met John. And we found out we had this shared interest in old working class London literature. So we both read these same 1930s books that were long out of print. People have forgotten some of these authors: James Curtis, Gerald Kirsch, Robert Westerby, and they wrote these smashing books in the 30s about, the equivalent of football hooligans then, if you like, but sort of low life you know, but duckers and divers and all of this stuff in London. So we said, you know, when we got the chance, we would republish some of these, and that's what we did. So London Books mainly republishes old London literature, which is quite handy because the authors are dead, so we don't have to pay them any royalties. And
is there a market for it? Is it? Do people
not really,
sort of...
not really.
No?
I mean, London Books, you know, is it washes its face, and you know, it does okay, but it is a small market. You're right, but we just love doing it, and we got to meet again so many interesting people through doing it, and now and then a book does well, and it's really lovely to see. But we like to sort of try and make enough of one book to have enough to do the next one. So it's a labour of love, but people that do like it really like it.
Yeah, and a book which me and we done On the Cobbles with Jimmy Stopkins.
Yeah, and
since then you've become sort of real good friends with Jim. You go to weddings and stag do's and all sorts of things with Jim, and he's a real character, Jimmy, isn't he? He's another one he's very modest but there's always a little spark with Jim. There's always something could happen when you're around him. He wouldn't turn on you or other people he knows, but he might do. But there's always a spark.
Well, let's hope not.
No, he wouldn't. I think he'd bash him anyway. But he would. There's always a spark.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's had a tough upbringing, isn't he?
Yeah, and how do you find, like, after we wrote the book with Jimmy? Because you've always said, I've introduced you to some right nutters. You always say that. But Jim is Jim, isn't he? And how do you find that you went to his cousin's wedding, Joe Smith's wedding?
Joe's daughter's wedding I went to last week.
Yeah.
No, I mean, they become good friends. In fact, Joe, I did a book with Joe called Gypsy Joe, original title. And it's about him. We've just republished it with some new chapters. Joe had a very close shave with COVID. We added a chapter about that and brought his book up to date, and have renamed it Kushti. So it's out. Wow. It's coming out next month. So that did that did well. That got the Observer Sports Book of the Year when it came out originally.
Did it really?
Yeah. And it sold quite well. So we've relaunched it because just after that came out, and so after it had been launched, the whole world went gypsy mad, didn't they? There was a big fat gypsy wedding and Paddy Doherty and all this stuff. Yeah. So we thought, you know, maybe it's worth bringing it out again. But I mean, Joe's story is quite an interesting one because he sort of went the opposite direction to maybe Jimmy and others. He did do boxing and bare knuckle fighting, but you know, he became a successful professional golfer, and he's now, you know, a very respectable businessman. And well, you know, Joe is Joe, isn't he? You know, he's an absolute scream.
He's got the poshest gypsy accent I've ever heard. He sounds like Harold Steptoe.
I always remember he took me to we went to Great Yarmouth, and he was doing some business up there, and we were staying overnight. So we went into the hotel, and he said, "Hello, sir. How much are your rooms?" And the guy said, "Well, £90 a night." And he said, "I'll give you 70." The bloke said, "Pardon?" You know, this was a chain, like I don't know what they were. You know, one Hilton or whatever, one of these chains, DoubleTree or whatever they're called. So he said, 70. He said, no, it's a list price, you know. And he said, well, he said, are you full up? He said, no. He said, you're not even half full, are you? He said, no. He said, well, surely you'd sell a room for 70 and rather than not have it at all. And he went, well, that's a good point. And he rang up his head office and they said, yeah.
Proper haggler.
I never knew you could haggle in hotels until I met
Joe.
No,
did I. That's typical Joe, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember when he met your mum and he said, "It's a privilege and an honour to meet you, Mrs. Knight." You remember that?
Very, very polite man. Very polite.
Oh, he's lovely, Joe. And Jimmy is as well. They're cousins, but they're so totally different people, aren't they? The way they outlook on life. And that was a joy to work. You got anything else lined up then, Mark? You've been doing any screenplays?
Yeah, I've got Kushti coming out in September. Then I've got a book called Broken Wafers, which is about my early childhood, from being born to 16. That's coming out early next year. And I wrote that because I have genuinely started forgetting stuff. And I wanted to sort of try and get down as much of that life, what we used to. So it's not really a story. It's just sort of, about what we did, what games we played, what clothes we wore, what records we bought, what food we ate. And I wanted to sort of capture all of that. And especially now, since this pandemic, everyone talked about the new normal. I think it's quite important to get down on paper what the old normal was. So we all remember. I mean, because we had, you would have been the same as children. The freedom we had was unbelievable, wasn't it? I mean, when the summer holidays were on, I would eat my breakfast, at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and say to my mum, right, I'm going out now. And she wouldn't see me again till 9 o'clock that night. And then you come in, and she'd never say, where have you been? We could have, and we did literally go anywhere. If we scrape a few coins together, we get on the train, go to Wimbledon, and walk around Wimbledon. Whatever it was, and that sort of freedom was absolutely brilliant. And I don't think children have got it now. And I think the way things are going, it's going to be less and less of that.
But I totally agree with you. You've done a book before, Common People, about growing up in Epsom, didn't you?
That was more of a novel. It was a novel, Common People, and it was based on my youth rather than my early childhood. And I sort of borrowed stories that I'd heard and based, characters on people I knew and sort of melded them together. But this is as factual as I can. I've tried to stick to facts with this one, and not sensationalise it in any way.
But
whether it's going to appeal to anyone outside of my household, I don't know. We'll see.
What was it? So that came out on Mainstream, the same publishing company as Zulu Fan, and me and you have had some right laughs with the bloke who owned it, and we.
Oh God,
I mean, we've been to what's that club they used to?
The Groucho
Club. And I turned up with a Lidl's bag with a manuscript in, and they fucking looked at me like I was some tramp. And there was a geezer, we was having a meeting with them about a book. Some gangster geezer was there. Eric Mason, was it? Who had a fight with one of the
Cranes. I remember now.
And there was a little geezer there with glasses, and he said, me and you was having a Budweiser, I think it was about £8 a bottle. And we said, what are you doing here, mate? He said, I've got a meeting with Bill Campbell from Mainstream. We said, well, have a drink. He said, well, what can I have? I said, get yourself a bottle of champagne or something. Anyway, he's all
who said that? This guy.
Get to this little geezer with glasses. He wrote a book for Mainstream. He was doing a presentation. And I said, get yourself a drink. He said, what can I have? I said, get yourself a bottle of champagne. Anyway, he drank this piece of champagne. It was pissed as a fart. I don't remember. He lost his glasses. He's lost his speech to talk about the book. And then when he went, Bill said, who the fuck got him drunk like that? I mean, me and you was pissing ourselves.
I remember you putting your hand in Bill's pocket trying to get his money out.
Oh, he didn't like it. I said, you're the tightest bastard I've ever met in my life. He didn't like that, did he?
No. He hated you.
Yeah, fucking good. I hated him, the cunt.
No, I'm joking.
But it was the funniest one ever, and I still laugh about it. And Terry Timewalk laughs about it. Is when I phoned your house up, and
you bastard,
and your wife answered the phone, and I said, "Hello, is Martin there?" She said, "Who is it?" I said, "It's Bill Campbell from Mainstream." She said, "Hang on, I'll just get him." She said, "Martin," in her posh voice, "Martin, it's Bill Campbell." You went, "Come on." I said, "You've just been on holiday." And I said, you said, "Oh, hello, Bill." I said, "Oh, that ain't Martin." You said, "Oh, yeah, not bad, Bill, just been on holiday." I said, "Did you lose any weight?" What? You went, "What?"
I remember
that was so funny, wasn't it? But me and you have met some nutty people, and I've introduced you to some mad people. Well, we've had some good times doing books and all that. But
no, it was a good period of my life, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really love going back to Peter Osgood. Sometimes you were there, sometimes you weren't. But we did this sort of book signing tour. You went to a few of them, I think. We were there doing pubs in Worthing and all over the south of England, and it was just a scream. He was a master at managing his audience. Really, really good. Really good. He made everyone feel like he remembered people's names and made people feel special. He was a lovely bloke.
Yeah, and the other one we done Grass with Phil Sparrow. about.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah,
that was a great story, wasn't it? That was a fantastic story.
I mean, of all the books that I've been involved in, I think that's got the strongest call to be a film, and I'm surprised no one's ever picked it up, because there's been films about the same bunch of people that I don't think were particularly good. And Phil's book, it was not because we wrote it. I mean, the story was just so funny. And here was a guy who never smoked a joint in his life, who at one point was responsible for smuggling in, I reckon, 3 out of 10 of every joint smoked in this country.
Yeah.
And even Howard Marks admitted he was the brains behind it.
Howard Marks worked for him, didn't he?
Well, they were partners.
But as you just said, Phil was the brains, and Howard was the sort of the man who 42 false passports from around the world. He had Irish. Yeah. He had some little island in Indonesia, and he met Mother Teresa on a plane. Well, she gave him one.
That was the best story in the book, I think, was when I'll just recount that story quickly. He's flying first class to India to do some business, and the first class bit is he's the only one in it. And the air hostess came up and said, we have a lady down the back who's not feeling very well. Would you mind if she came and sat up in first class? So he said, no, that's not a problem. So they brought up this little sort of bent over lady, sat her down, and he sort of done a double take, and it was Mother Teresa. It was already paid. And she was going out to wherever it was to do a missionary sort of work. And she told him about all of the work she was doing. The more she told him, the more guilty he was feeling about how he made his money. So he wrote a check out to her. I can't remember what it was, something like $25,000, but we're talking about 1979 or 80 or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, that was that. They shook hands and went their separate ways. And then a couple of years later, Phil found himself in a Thai prison with no prospect of a trial, and they were just looking. His life was looking pretty dire. And he wrote to Mother Teresa. Said, "Dear Mother Teresa, I don't know if you remember me, but I met you on a plane 3 or 4 years ago, and we discussed various things. I'm in a bit of a pickle." Told her his story. I wonder if you could pull any strings. And she wrote back to him and said, "How can I forget a man that gave me $25,000 on an aeroplane?" She said, "I can't pull any strings, but I will have a word with the one man that matters, the God, Lord God Almighty." And we saw the letter, didn't we? I think the letter's reproduced in the book.
Is it a book? Yeah. But no, we've done some good stuff together, and I've really enjoyed that. As you say, you enjoyed it, and I've really enjoyed it. Gave me good laughs, and no, it's been brilliant. So you was going to start doing some screenplays, Mark. Anything come of them? No. I wrote a screenplay for the book I wrote about. That you probably don't even know about this one. The policeman that got murdered in Epsom. I read it.
You read it? Yeah.
You sent me a copy.
Yeah, well, I did a screenplay for that, and I sort of punted it around for about a year, but never really got anywhere. I did one on another one, but I can't think what it was. So no, I've had no success in that area.
Yeah. Do you think it's harder to write a screenplay?
Not necessarily. No, I mean, I really enjoyed doing it. There's this software package you can get called Final Draft, and it sort of automates it, the dialogue and everything, and so you end up producing your script in the only way they will read it, these people. And I loved it, because you have to think from different angles and work out. You've got to have the cost of making a film or a TV program in your mind. So there's no point in having a scene where you've got 1,000 soldiers coming over a hill all dressed in Napoleonic uniform, because you're not going to get it, and that's going to cost you millions. So you've got to try and restrict the scenes, if you like, to small dialogue left. What are you laughing at?
Fucking 1,000 Napoleonic troops.
Well, no, you know what I mean. So
you're doing a story about
think in a different way.
Yeah, you're doing a story about Epsom Town Centre, and there's 1,000 Napoleonic troops.
Right. I was trying to illustrate the point.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I've always had an idea. I've spoke to you before about it, but I can't work out how you would do it. I think, as you just said, your brain's got to work in a different way.
Yeah, once you start, your brain sort of thinks differently.
Yeah. I'm still doing Mickey Greenaway's book, and another one you're friendly with, which is Danny Harkins. You've got a friend with Danny, isn't you? And
you were there the day I wrote to him and showed him Who Fan, a draft of Who Fan, and then he said, "Well, let's have a meet up to talk about it." And we went to meet him in that pub in Wandsworth, didn't we?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
All the grass Yeah. And we stayed friends. I knew him back in the day, but he wouldn't have known who I was. I was one of the many that sort of stood there admiring him, looking at see what colour Ben Sherman he's got on, and looking at his clothes and his sideboards and with sort of adulation. So, and I was sort of got as near as I could to him, but he wouldn't have remembered me. But after that we became very good friends and still are. Yeah.
Well, hopefully
you had him on your podcast, didn't you? I mean,
he was there when we done it.
He's an interesting guy.
He really is. He's in denial that he was ever what he was. Everybody knew who Danny Eccles was.
Yeah, but maybe I don't know. Maybe you don't realise it when it's you yourself, because it's a strange sort of fame that all those people had, wasn't it? That it was an underground fame. So he wasn't in the newspapers. He wasn't on the television. Yet thousands of people knew who he was. I don't know.
Yeah,
it wouldn't surprise me if it did sort of go over his head and he didn't realise.
Well, because he's a successful businessman as well, wasn't he? He's very clever.
He's very industrious, very hardworking. He believes in the hard work ethic, and that's how he's made his money.
But when we done the interview and you was there and you was sort of telling him, or you was pulling him up with some of the things he was saying, which was a little bit over the top, some of them. But when I said to him, which I found him, I said, I found you very arrogant. And he didn't, what do you mean arrogant? I said, well, you was very aloof.
He said aloof.
Yeah. I said, you was very aloof. He said, nah, not me. He said, I was an actor. He said, I was just playing the part. And he sort of tried to play it down. And I can understand that because he's a successful businessman. And but that was like 40 years ago, 50 years ago in some cases. But he's a really nice geezer, but he's funny as anything. He phones me up and asks me about my cancer. He said, I think I might have a touch of cancer. I said, a touch of cancer? He said, I'm spitting up blood, he said. I said, well, you want to go to the doctors? And then he'll phone me up a month later. Oh, Martin, I'm still spitting up blood. Like I'm an oncologist or something.
Yeah.
He's a lovely fella. And as you know, we're all having a drink on Saturday, which hopefully everyone comes and see everybody, and that'd be nice. But,
I look forward to it.
No, that's good. Thanks for coming on, Mark. You were brilliant, as I knew you would be. And I'll catch up with you on Saturday.
All right, mate. See you then.
Yeah, thanks very much. That was Martin Knight on SW6 Blues, Pride of London. Thanks, Martin. Brilliant, mate. Cheers, mate. Take care. Ta-ra, mate. See ya.
Bye-bye.